the amazing Utah Saints. We're going to let these guys introduce themselves, and then we're going to go straight down to business.
I'm Jez from Utah Saints.
I'm Tim, Utah Saints the other half.
So let's take it right back, guys. Are we taking that since 91, or we're going past and we're going beyond them sort of times as well? Go on, guys.
Basically, we met and started Utah Saints in 1991. But prior to that, Tim had entered the DMC Championships out of his bedroom when he was 17 and got the finals.
Respect.
Semi-finals.
Yeah.
The year the cash money won. You got the finals, but you didn't go.
88.
So I did that out in the bedroom. It was 87 I entered it and came nowhere because I never played in front of anybody because I was nervous and made my heel jump, and then took another 12 months, did it again, and then got into the semi-finals. But I was only 17 and I was
brave.
I was living in Leeds, and to go to the semi-finals I had to go down to London, and I couldn't get anybody to go with me. I just thought I'm not going to go on my own. I wish I'd gone that, but I was 17 years old and to go to London and just enter a competition on your own.
Especially DMC.
Yeah, I bottled out. So but it's cool. I got into the semi-finals, got my jacket, got my free sign. So 17 years old was quite.
Met up with Tony Prince.
Yeah, I did. I met Chad Jackson and all those people, and so yeah, it was a good experience. And then I kind of got a job after that, DJing in club for like £20 a night. So.
And then so he was doing that, and I was at school doing a mobile disco, doing just weddings and retirement parties and 18s and anything that sort of paid the bills. And then we both started putting out sort of records. I was putting out more industrial kind of electronic.
What production yourself?
Yeah, just on all little labels, like pressing 1,000 copies. And Tim was doing like kind of.
Well, there's this label called Ozone, which was like based out of Sheffield. It was kind of like. Quite a few cool little things going on, and so I put a few sort of just sort of little techno tracks out that sort of do like 300 or 400 each one, and so that was cool.
I was putting out industrial kind of electronic records, and they were doing about 300 or 400. And at the same time, we were both promoting nights, and I was promoting a club in Leeds called the Gallery, and we had everyone come through there from like Carl Cox, Sasha, the famous Sasha used to DJ in the basement stuff right at the very beginning of time, I think it was. And then we started both DJing at a club in Harrogate, and I was doing the Saturday night, and it was more like kind of funk and kind of funk based, funk and hip hop based, and Tim was doing the Friday night, which was house based. And we started sort of swapping tapes, and then we thought, let's try going to the studio together, because we were coming out and doing the same thing from different angles. And the first thing we did was a track called What Can You Do For Me? We pressed 1,000 copies of that onto, it was meant to be bright orange vinyl, but I didn't know Tim very well at the time, obviously, because we were just met, and I didn't know that he was red-green colourblind. And he was choosing the colours to mix together for the vinyl. It came out kind of this vomit colour. But it worked in our favour, this vomit coloured vinyl. And we pressed 1,000 of it, and it just went mental. It was just right time, right place, right track, and 3 months later we were on top of the pops and stuff, and it just went bam.
In the charts and everything.
Yeah, so we just ended up hanging on to the coattails of Utah Saints for a long time.
Is that where you decided that you was going to use that to perpetuate where you are today, or
did you
realise it was going to have the longevity of
No, we had no plan going into it, other than we happened to bring different things to the table, and every band I've been in prior to that, it was the reason the bands kind of fall apart is that people bring the same things to the table.
Yeah.
So me and Tim, we've always brought different things to the table, and that's why it's kind of kept going, because after that record we were kind of a one-hit wonder technically, and then we had another hit a year after called Something Good, and then it came out again a couple of years ago. Yeah. Another hit called Believe in Me.
Video to that incident.
Nice one. And then I think
the important thing with those records is that they were. Then they ended up kind of being pop records, but they never started off being pop records. And
very much underground.
We just made them, and we did like 1,000 copies on the first thing. And back in that time, radio kind of didn't really support the dance music. There was kind of, kids were going out on Saturday night to rave around Manchester, and Blackburn, and there were these massive records that were getting played, and records were charting from out of nowhere. Like these kids who were making records in the bedroom. Purely on sales from when the shops opened Monday morning.
Yeah.
No downloads. It was like kids would go out and buy
the records. You have to.
Yeah, you go and buy vinyl, and you know, CDs was sort of kicking in then. But those records were kind of flying into the top 10 and beating well-established artists. Like remember we were signed to the same label as like Faith No More. Like, you know, and they had quite a lot of money behind them on the video and everything. You know, and we flew into the charts like 2 or 3 places above them, and that was just purely from like kids going out and buying the record. And you know, we had a bit of support on sort of specialist shows on Radio 1 in the evening, but we didn't have daytime mainstream
coverage.
Yeah, so that was the same with a lot of bands, things like SL2, Prodigy.
Yeah, true.
All those bands started out like that, and they used to just go around the country and play these raves, and people bought the records. So, you know, when you look back at it now, you kind of think these are like pop records, which they are, but they never started off that way. So it's kind of important, you know, because we never set out to sort of make records to be in the charts. Everybody was making records.
It becomes popular, so that's the only way that it can really go. So
it's cool. It's like, I'm not saying that it's, you know, I'm not against pop. I mean, I like all sorts of type of things, but it's kind of important to me, sort of people today, to see the sort of history of all those records. That, you know, and it was just a really exciting time, and you know, it is again now, but it was a really exciting time. You know, there were a lot of big bands that started at that time. Like Prodigy, Moby.
1991, 92 was like what they call a golden era, especially with like electronic music, because like we're going to touch on now, the equipment that was about there was very much fresh, and people only just started to experiment with things like the Akai, you know, that was really big back then. Cubase's only just started to poke its head through, things like that. So you had them sort of programs. Which programs did you use, and which ones did you find that were easiest?
Well, we started out with proper old school. We started with the Yamaha CX5 computer, which you'd never hear of anywhere, but basically it was a MIDI computer made by Yamaha, and they got as far as the Mark II and then abandoned it. But it cost a fortune, and it had a step editor in it. It took forever to program, basically. So we started out with that, Rolaz SH101, which is a bit of a classic now. And an Akai S612, which is predated the 900, which was
that's what I remember. 900.
So the 612 worked on quick discs, which were these tiny redundant little discs. You could get one sample about 2 seconds on one side. It had sides, and you had to remember which side to put the sample on. And then it had sliders for the start point and the end point, and that was it, basically. Wow. So it was like real proper. And then we kind of graduated to, we went in the studio and we could use an S900 Akai and their Atari. And that's when Cubase was just starting out, and it used to come on one floppy disk as well, so like 1 meg, and the Ataris were like 520 meg. It's just like, so the whole thing sounds ridiculous now, but in a way it was very liberating though, because it suddenly meant the sampler just revolutionised like absolutely everything, and it meant you didn't, even though bands were already sort of doing that with like especially all the hip hop bands were kind of putting things together on tape and stuff, the sampler just made it so much quicker. Even though at the time it used to take us ages to get things in time, and you can do it really fast now.
But at the time it was so way advanced using the Akai, it's like you was way up on the game if you understood how to use it.
Yeah, we were lucky. We're lucky, to be honest, and we were just geeky, to be honest. You know, that's how you have to be a bit geeky, and you know, I still find myself now having conversations with people at like 2 in the morning about bits of technology. And I'm thinking, no, this is all wrong.
Should we pass it?
It's always been like that with you. We've always kind of been into the gear side of things and just like trying to keep up, basically.
So after you started getting really into the flow of the music, and you realised that you was generating a name for yourselves, where did you think, because obviously the hardcore was, not obviously, but hardcore was dying around 94, 95, a new generation of music was coming in, so where did it find to you that we're quite happy what we're doing, so we're going to go down this particular route?
To be honest, we were a bit, we kind of semi-lost the plot, to be frank, because basically we didn't expect to get sort of the whole fame. I'm not saying we got really famous, but we became quite well known because we put the Utah Saints on the record, and we nicked that idea off the KLF, because the KLF were always name checking as well. They nicked it off loads of hip hop tracks where they were always name checking themselves. So we're just like, you know, it was just a thing, but it happened for us. It happened to be something that people would still remember now, you know, almost 20 years later.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So, we got to a point where we were doing quite well. We sold records in America and stuff, and we suddenly had a lot of attention from the business. And in America, the business, when I say the business, I mean like record company, reps, and a lot of, you know, people who come to see us getting a plot on what they thought we were and stuff. And over in America at the time, big industrial band Nine Inch Nails were number one.
Right.
Because we had a hard edge to us, and we sampled guitars and stuff a bit. We sampled Slayer on the first album. Over there, they were really trying to make us into Nine Inch Nails, and over here, the KLF had split up, and there was quite a lot of pressure on us to kind of try and pick up that. But really, we just needed to be left alone to do what we did. And we bought into the whole thing. We thought, okay, well, if we've done all right in sort of basically a home studio in Leeds, if we go into a big studio in London, then we're going to make better music. And although we made, we think, interesting music, it wasn't particularly commercially viable in everybody else's opinion. Because what happens when you get to that level is, if you're not really strong, which we were quite insecure about music, because you know, we never really understood why it sold in the first place. And if you make anything, you're a bit insecure about whether it's any good. That's what keeps you going with your game. You know, keeps you upping things all the time. You have to be a bit unsure if it's any good. And so we were taking a lot of input, way too much input from everybody. And as a result, we made quite an unfocused album.
Is that the reason why the gap between the albums?
Yeah. Well, we finished the second album, and at one point while we were working on it, the Americans were in, and the record company was in, the UK record company was in, and everyone was dead excited. They were going, oh, this is going to be, quote, the thriller of dance music. There was 10 singles on it, and blah blah blah. And then it just sort of all started falling to bits. We kind of overcooked it, to be honest. And everyone was going, are you sure this is right? And you sure that's right? And you start dissecting the whole thing. Then you take a step back and you think, actually, this is, by the time this comes out, it's going to be out of date. And then you start, and then Liam Howlett dropped Back of the Land, wasn't it?
Right, yeah.
Generation.
Yeah. Right.
And we were just like, because he's like a total genius, basically. But he was also our benchmark, because we all started the same. We used to pass each other going in and out of raves. Literally, we'd turn up as they were coming out, and or they'd turn up as we were going out. So we don't know him very well, not big mates or anything, but we've got total respect for them, and he's really, really, really good and really clever. And so when that album came out, we just looked at our album and thought, it's not as good. Well, what we should be doing is just thinking ourselves and thinking, is our album better than the previous album, which it was. But anyway, that's a long way of saying we made an album that didn't work for us, didn't work for the record company. So to get out of a legal situation like that takes about 3 years. Before we knew it, we were sort of in the year 2000, and we finished our third album, which did come out, but it was actually our second album that was released. And we're super proud of that, but when that came out, it was just totally the wrong time for us. There was nowhere for us to fit at all. And we just felt quite out of it, so yeah.
So basically at that point then we sort of down tools on music for you guys for it, and we kind of had a few things with the manager, and we needed to get out of the deal again. Just sort of stopped for a bit, and so what we did was just went and started our own night, and just went back to DJing, and just thought, you know, there's a lot of time in the studio, it's kind of like we weren't going out, we weren't seeing a lot of DJs, we were hearing kind of always cool music, so you know, we thought, right, we'll get back into DJing. We started like this little night in Leeds, which it wasn't meant to be a big like club night or anything, it was just for places, me and Justin going to play records on Saturday night. It could be hip hop, drum and bass, anything.
We didn't bill ourselves as UTSA, we just started, we went right back to square one, we started
go back to your roots.
Yeah, we just did DJing, and it was quite funny because it ended up, we ended up starting to sort of go out and do some little DJ gigs at some other places, so when we weren't there we were thinking, yeah, we better put somebody cool in to cover it because who's going to play kind of quite varied music and that. Otherwise, one week when we didn't do it, we just let the club put somebody in. The week after, we were getting always really sort of strange requests for just music we didn't like really. so we thought, right, we'll start putting guests in when we're not there. And it, you know, one of our first guests was DJ Crafty.
Right.
So who was back at that time, he was kind of quite early on in his career.
Right.
You know, and that worked really well. And so then, you know, cross over that kind of soft sort of spot for sort of the DMC things. We started booking people. You know, we started going through the DMC champions like Cash Money, all those sort of people, and it just kind of escalated, and then you know got to then started another club in Edinburgh. You know, got to putting on people like Justice, High Contrast, Zing, everybody then Scratch Perverts. Do you know what I mean? Just anything that we thought, they're cool. We you know.
There wasn't really house. We
put Soulwax on as well. You know, we put Soulwax on very early on in the day, and so you know, basically our club was pretty small capacity, so the only way we could kind of make it work was we had to be on top of our game. We just try and get all these people really early on in their careers, because by the time they blew up,
there's no chance.
Because of it.
Yeah, so we just so we booked all these people just really early on, and so it was cool because like I said, like the first people did like too many DJs, did them in Leeds, and you know didn't pay hardly anything.
Yeah.
And you know, and the same with like Justice, and you know, so it's cool, and you know, but that made us kind of pull back and love the music again. And
but I think that's the whole point with music though, really, because you know, especially with your guys listening to your story there, it's like you've come from, you know, the ground roots and built the music that, you know, everybody loved at that time, and then you've kind of like fallen out with, not out of love,
no, you're right.
You've fallen out of sync with what's going on,
and
then you've had to come back where you started to regain where you actually were in the first place.
Exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And we realised that really we need to. What's most inspiring for us is stuff that's a bit left of field. Like so the night's called Sugar Beat, and we did it every week for 10 years in Leeds, and we've done it once a month in Edinburgh for 5 years.
Right.
And like Tim says, we just started putting on people that we thought were interesting. So on top of things like Justice or too many DJs, we'd also put on things like Elbow came across the DJ set, and the Doves as well.
Yeah.
And just that was just like interesting music really that really inspired our music and gave us a confidence.
Is that where you started bringing out the live element with your music? Is that where you just opened up?
No, well, right back in the day, we were actually we put together a 5-piece band in '93 and went on tour with it, and we did 3.5 months, mainly for America, to be honest, because in America the whole rave thing didn't quite catch on the way it did here, and also even here as well. '93, '94 sounds ridiculous now. In 93, 94, you could not get away being on the main stage at a festival and being a DJ. You had to have something else going on. So we used to take out, we had 2 drummers, because people always like seeing people hit
solo drummers.
Yeah. So we had 2 drummers, and Tim was, instead of lead guitarist, he was on his decks. So we had, the decks is like a featured instrument, and I had a MIDI guitar and I had a keyboard player, and we did 3.5 months around America touring. We supported U2 on 10 big stadium shows as well, which, you know, credit to them, because they've always been trying to get on what's going on as well at the time. And so we did actually put the whole live thing together, and then when we started going out again as U-Tards, we thought, rather than put a band together, it's much more acceptable now to be DJs and stuff. And obviously Tim with his DMC background better than me, so I've got the effects and he's got his the
tricks.
Yeah, so it kind of works that way. At some point in the future, I don't know if and when we start putting more and more music out, get bigger, probably put more live elements and stuff in. We've always had great ambitions as a live thing. Like we were trying to, back in the day, again it sounds ridiculous, but when we toured here, we took out I think it was like 20 or 24 TV screens. Again, it was really high tech at the time, and it was the whole point was like a lot of graphics on it to try and make the whole stage look like it was moving, kind of position around the band and stuff. And then we were trying to get a marquee put up inside venues, so you projected on the top of it, and inside the marquee where we stood, it would go from like night to day, or rain, and stuff like that. And so we've always had great ambitions that it's purely down to money. So I don't know how it's going to develop from here, but at the moment we're quite happy.
So let's bring it up to the present now. So have we got an album coming out? We've got the singles coming out.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully we kind of had the record, Something Good got released. Obviously got released it was 2008 now, and so like the last sort of few years we've just been basically in the studio doing. We started doing quite a few remixes just to get us back into it really. You know, remixing our Decline, done Frankie Killer for. Yeah, just quite a few little projects, and really good little studio in Leeds where there's just like really good things going on. It's kind of like 12 other sort of DJs. I think Slim, he's just moved in his whole bomb squad studios. You know, so it's like it's cool because we're all just kind of go out the room and it's like, you know, just vibing off each other and just swapping little ideas about gear. And, you know, some days it's bags, we just end up talking stuff.
It's like being back at school all over again.
Yeah, so it's a really exciting time for us, and you know, so we've got our heads down, just sort of been making new tunes. So you know, hopefully we'll get stuff out in the next probably the next few months really.
Cool. Let's talk a bit about the Something Good video, because I absolutely wasn't off that. Tell us a bit about the story behind that.
Well,
the Running Man.
So the Running Man video. So for Something Good away, when it was coming out again, there's a lot of interest in who was going to sign it, and we re-recorded the vocal and everything, because it's not Kate Bush on the Something Good away, it's redone. And we wanted a new video for it, and we signed to Miniature Sound, and Miniature Sound have a certain type of video that they make, which generally involves girls in bikinis and like the Eric Briggs video.
Yeah, it was very much so, yeah.
So, and we've never been that comfortable with, sounds really weird this, but we've never been that comfortable with girls in bikinis. That's not true. We are comfortable with girls in bikinis, but not in videos.
Yeah,
and not in videos just for the sake of doing it. We thought there's got to be a spin on that somehow. And we started getting, Ministry were getting these ideas in, because that's, to be fair, that works for them, so they know what they're doing. But we just kept saying, no, we're not for that idea, we're not for that idea. We're just like,
yeah, it's out of our comfort zone really.
Yeah, it's out of comfort zone. So
the only way around it was to kind of go with, you know, some other kind of thing that would
some other theme.
Yeah, just have an element of like sort of humour in it that you know, to just kind of get them a little bit off the idea of that kind of thing, because all the initial ideas that were coming in were like Utah Saints in a club and girls and that, and we were like, right, now we've got to do something else. And we went down and sat down and talked to them, and to be fair, you know, they totally came on board and listened, and that's it. Then they came back with a few ideas, and one of the ideas was the Running Man.
Yeah, it's class, absolute class.
You know, and you know, and on paper, it's weird because you look back and I think, oh, it's a genius idea, but when you actually read the script for it at first on paper, me and Jess were like, oh, I don't know if it's going to work.
Yeah, but no, we weren't sure it was going to, because also, they wanted, it's quite funny, they was going, oh, where should we set it? And I'm from Carlisle originally. So I said, I should set it in Carlisle. The guys from London who was doing it, I don't think he'd ever heard of Carlisle. So in his head it became Cardiff. So that's how it ended up in Cardiff. So we turned up for the video shoot because there were just Welsh flags everywhere. We're alright, like, that'll do. It's just, so the whole thing was kind of...
It works really well though.
It was just a catalogue of happy accidents for all to come.
It's very funny for people who haven't seen the video as well. It's like set like in the 80s, it's very retro.
Yeah, it is really retro.
And the guy starts dancing, and you know, there's a couple, one or two go over, they start doing the same dance, and then before you know it, everyone's dancing. And I love some of the comments, you know, while they're dancing. Where's this guy come from? It's absolutely amazing.
We wanted something that just was you had some humour to it, and Ministry wanted something with dancing ladies in it. So we're all happy. Everybody's happy.
So let's take us to 2010 now. So what can we expect from? I know we've spoke a bit about the singles, but are you still guys touring still?
So yeah, we've kind of the last sort of few years we've been sort of everywhere, like States, Australia. It's like the next week I'm off to Dubai. You know, every weekend really we've kind of been out. But the cool thing about that is it's just it totally keeps you on top of your game.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
You know, we like last weekend we got to put on this insane sort of building in Birmingham. So everybody from James being here, Dylan Fire, you know, a lot of sort of drum bass things, Slam Warriors, and you know, you're on this lineup, and so you know you're going to be playing either before or after one of these sort of people. So you just got to totally be on top of your game and on top of your music, and so it kind of makes make me enjoy it. I spend a lot of the week listening to music.
Sounds like you guys have really fallen back in love with what
we
you're
have.
doing.
I mean, it's funny because it actually makes it a bit more difficult for us because we've always turned down anything to do with like old school or those kind of the classic nights and that. Not because we don't like the music, it's just that we're not stuck there. We just carried on moving.
Yeah.
So whereas it would actually probably be easier for us to go into a club, just play anthem, and from back in the day, and then move on. But really, we kind of stick ourselves in the middle of our lineup, like we just got on before Saturn Warriors, which is what we did on Sunday, and it does make it's kind of stressful for us, but it does improve our music.
But you see with the DJ, and I've seen with DJs and been going to clubs since the 90s myself, so it was very much the DJs came in, they'll play, you probably, if you go to a jungle night, you know what to expect. Yeah. If you go to a hardcore night, you know what to expect. Nowadays it seems to be more reflexive. So you don't, even though you'll have like a range of DJs from like N-Time to you guys to DJ Hype, they'll have a whole leaflet.
It works though.
Yeah, very much so, because people are a lot more open to it, I suppose, back then. You never got away with that in the 90s.
No, you're right, and I think that's the brilliant thing about music at the minute is that you can exactly what you just said, is that rather than going to, because it used to in my head, and sometimes you go to a night and you get 6 hours of, and sometimes you get 6 hours just repeating themselves. Because you get another DJ come in and play it more or less what they So, but now you can go in and you're right, you can get something, you get dubstep, house, drum and bass, fidget, bit of hip hop, and then back to some house and that, and it just all works.
Yeah, it does.
And that's down to skillful DJs as well, can put it together like that and make it work. But I've been to some really exciting nights where the lineup doesn't look like it'll work on paper, but it just totally flows. It totally really works.
I think as well, like music today, like if you put a record on sort of made today against a record made in the 90s, it's like just the production on a lot of records stands out so much. And I think the key thing which making all these records also work together is like all those records you've got, the type of genres, drum bass, dubstep, even like fidget, hip hop and that. The one thing they've all got in common, I think everything's based around the bass line.
Yeah, true.
At the moment, but you're getting, all clubs have kind of seem to have better sound systems, music's getting produced better, and it's just like all it seems to be, everything's about bassing and
that's where it should be. But
whether you like drum and bass or dubstep or hip hop or not, it's got that common for me. Every kind of big track within those genres all about
bassline.
It is all about bassline for me.
Right, guys, I'll have to cut it there.
Nice.
Absolutely brilliant talking to you guys. Glad we've gone down memory lane.
Nice,
Wish you all the best in the future.
Tronique.